Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomás McCarthy on WLR.
Welcome into your weekly GA show. Lorna Porca here on WLR. Tomás McCarthy here till 7 o'clock. Well, ahead of a knockout weekend in the Daysha, Brian Flannery and Kieran O'Connor will predict the final four in the County Senior Hurling Championship as a Skoda big match returns on WLR. The Waterford Stars have also been shining bright in the divisional competitions. Tony Ryan from the Dungarvan Observer will preview the Western semi-finals, while Michael O'Brien will look ahead to all the Eastern action. So the Skoda big match is back on WLR ahead of a knockout weekend in the County Senior Hurling Championship. 8 will become 4 as we enter the quarter-final stages of the competition. Tune in for live coverage of Ballygunner versus 4 Mile Water Saturday evening from 6:20 and Lismore versus Abbeyside on Sunday evening from 6:05. Well, to tee up to all the weekend action, we're delighted to welcome our own very own Kieran O'Connor, who is on the line, and also former Waterford captain and Munster Express columnist, and a man who predicted 7 of the 8 quarter-finalists. That's Brian Flannery, who is with me here in studio. And Kieran, I suppose it's 5 months since the last live match on WLR. That was Limerick versus Waterford in the Gaelic grounds way back in March. You must be raring to go now for Saturday evening.
Unbelievable, Tomás, and as you say, 5 months. And as we left the Gaelic ground that night, we're eagerly looking forward to the quarter-final against Kilkenny the following Sunday in Nolan Park, and that was the big focus. And who would believe? I felt that might go off for a few weeks and we'd be back on track, but 5 months down the track. But look, definitely eagerly looking forward. And I must say the last few weeks have been uplifting for everyone. People are chatting about current action rather than looking at the 04 Munster final for the 5th time, you know. So I think while they were great novelty early on, people were just gagging to get out. And I must say to everyone involved in the county board and the protocol in place and players and management has been difficult. And more importantly, the general supporters who had to just bite their lip and sit at home, but definitely the support by everyone has got us to where we are. We're in the quarterfinals, 3 weeks to go, and please God, we'll get everything done to schedule. But hats off to everyone, particularly the county board, the clubs, and I say, and the general supporters, and everyone in Waterford GA for getting as far as we have and bringing live action back to us.
So can you fill us in on the lineup this weekend, Kieran? It's an exciting partnership between Nemeton, Waterford GA and WLR as well.
Yeah, of course so, and obviously without George Corbett Skoda, who's been ever present for the last number of years, George is back on board again, and normally George would have been looking forward to, during the summer, the height of the championship matches and also the knockout stage of the league. So unfortunately, as you said, we didn't have a George Corbett Skoda big match since last March. So yeah, so George is thankfully back on board, and WLR are linking up with Nemeton and the county board, who have been live streaming the last few weeks. So the game Saturday evening, I'm doing the match live with my co-commentator Derek McGrath. We're delighted to have Derek on board, who's a great insight into all the current stars on all the teams, and also a great reader of the game. And then on Sunday evening, our old pal Fergal Hartley is back in the commentary box with me on Sunday evening for the Abbeyside Lismore game. So eagerly looking forward to the two of them. But all 4 games on Sunday, on the outside you would think you'd predict all 4 easy enough, but of all the 4, I think the one Sunday night is the one that's going to be more difficult to call.
Great stuff. We'll start with Saturday evening, Brian, Ballygunner versus 4 Mile Water. As I mentioned there, you predicted 7 of the 8 quarter-finalists. 4 Mile Water were the fly in the ointment, if you like.
Yeah, that was a close run thing as well.
It was. How will they fare against Ballygunner Saturday evening?
Well, look, I suppose first of all, 4 Mile, I'm sure absolutely delighted that they're still in the championship. You know, they had a fantastic win over Dungarvan, and I suppose, look, that was the real boost they needed. You know, I'm sure there would have been fingers crossed last Sunday evening with the result of Lismore and Dungarvan, and, you know, it fell their way. But, you know, 4 Mile are there on merit, and probably the last couple of years they probably haven't played up to, I suppose, the standard, you know, in relation to the talent that they actually have. So, you know, this is certainly a step forward. I think the fact that the match is on obviously in Dungarvan, where 4 Mile Water play all their games, I think there must be a problem with the sat nav up in 4 Mile. I don't think it works past Leamy Bryan, but look, Ballygunner as multiple champions, I suppose, won't be too worried going to Fraher Field either. It is a big ask, you know, at the end of the day. You know, the 4 Mile will need a huge performance to stick with the champions. But they are capable. Even last time out when they lost to Lismore, you know, they had goal chances at key moments in the game, you know, that they didn't take. I think this weekend, they're going to have to take those chances. Where they get goal chances, they must take them. Free taking as well. I think young Aaron Ryan coming in this year has made a big difference. That was certainly a problem, certainly last year. So they have a lot to look forward to. The form of Jamie Barron. And I suppose it's across all the teams. The inter-county players, the better players, are really showing up for their clubs, and the likes of Jamie Barron certainly isn't letting the side down there. So look, at the end of the day, it is still a big ask.
How will they approach this game, Brian? We saw Passage last Saturday set up with 7 at the back, Gary Cullinan in front of the full back line. It worked up to a point, probably up to half time, when Ballygunner got their first goal. How do you think Four Mile Water will set up with Ballygunner and try and stay in the game for as long as possible?
Yeah, well, I think, look, I suppose the key thing from a 4 Mile point of view is not to concede too much early on, and certainly not to concede any early goals. That is hugely important. They need to keep their confidence levels high. They need to stay in the game. They have tended to use probably a 2-man full forward line anyway. They have great, I suppose, both physicality and pace in the team. So, they're well capable, I suppose, of maybe crowding that middle third to a degree, and trying to make it difficult for Ballygunner to find their shooters, and just to put them under, I suppose, as much pressure as possible. But, you can't just be defensive against a team like Ballygunner. The best way, I suppose, look, you need to be scoring. You need to score to keep in the game. There's absolutely no doubt, Ballygunner are going to shoot in excess of 20 points. So, 4 Mile need to keep the scoreboard ticking over as well to keep in the game. But they have the players. They have the players if they're, I suppose, on the night, if they're capable of taking the chances as they arise. And look, it's let's be honest, it's still a big ask. Ballygunner will be short price favourites for this game, and the difference, I suppose, at the end of the day is, I suppose Ballygunner have the proven, I suppose, championship pedigree, and when you get to knockout stages, I think all the teams, you've got to come up a gear or two, and Ballygunner has proved, time and time again, that they're capable of doing that. That's the question, I suppose, that's facing 4 Mile. Can they step up to another level to really threaten the county champions? Yeah,
Kieran, would you go along with Brian, even though Páirce Mahoney came off with a back spasm the last day? He's been an injury concern going into this. Would you still feel that Ballygunner will have too much for 4 Mile Water come Sunday evening?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Brian said there. As you mentioned, Páirce Mahoney, and probably this back injury, I'm sure Dara Sullivan and Franks and all the background team and Shea Fitzpatrick and everyone, look, there's a big risk here. Do you play him? And if he aggravates it again, could he be out for semi? Because all games are coming too fast and sharp. Or do you rest him and then open up an opportunity for 4 Mile Water? But the balance that's within Ballygunner is really so impressive. And when they hit the hard patches, they have that experience from Socky right up to Desi, like to really work that ball. And I've been impressed with the younger guys, the Mikey Mahoney, the Kevin Mahoney's, and also, of course, young Tyke Foley, keeping up a great tradition set up by his late dad, Paul. Wouldn't he be so proud to see his young men making such an impact? But they're really an all-round team and panel. Now, 4 Mile Water, very like Abbeyside, Ballynacorty, they haven't seen a football for 4 or 5 weeks. And in all my time covering matches, that's the first time that footballs haven't been kicked in both of those clubs in the height of a championship. So that's a big plus. They're very disappointed with their display. They had some good moments against us more, but overall they were disappointed that they didn't do themselves justice that day. Impressive against Dungarvan. They'll be looking for that form. They need a lot to go right, but if it does, they're definitely a team, I'm sure, and Brian will vouch for it. Ballygunner don't enjoy playing the likes of 4 Mile Water or indeed Abbeyside, Ballynacorty from that point of view. They're a different outfit to your standard, literally, hurling team, inverted commas. But look, an all-known form, you'd have to go with the champions Ballygunner, but if any team could upset them, it could be 4 Mile Water. And if they produce the form that they showed that night against them in their opening round, I'd give them a really big shout.
So maybe closer than some of the bookmakers are predicting here. Our first live game, Saturday evening, 6:30, Fairfield. That's Ballygunner versus 4 Mile Water. Brian, looking at the second Sunday evening game, our second big match, Lismore versus Abbeyside, 6:15 in Fairfield. You were in Dungarvan last weekend for Lismore, 6:18. Dungarvan 4:19. Are Lismore turning into the Newcastle United of Waterford hurling, Brian?
Well, look, I suppose first of all, it was a real treat to be in Dungarvan last weekend. Fabulous game. But fantastic scores from both sides, in fairness. It was real brilliant to catch a game, with that sort of open hurling. Lismore have been very impressive. They're going into this game now with 2 wins under their belt. But I think, looking at Brendan Landers on the line with them, they're playing to their strengths. They have some very good fielders of the ball. They play a lot of direct ball down to them. And when you're scoring goals at that sort of rate, you're going to be a very difficult team to beat. But it is a joy to watch great players, great scores. And this is, of all the games this weekend, this is probably the tie it around, and probably the one that you'd be, I suppose, less confident of predicting. But Lismore are entitled to be favourites. They're coming in on the back of, I suppose, 2 victories and 2 very impressive victories. Might be a little bit concerned. Normally when you concede the sort of score they conceded against Dungarvan, you don't tend to win games. But they did what they had to do. And if they hit those sort of heights again, and look, the likes of Morris has certainly been grabbing the headlines, but he has great support with the likes of Ray Barry beside him up front. Jack Prendergast is an absolute joy to watch as well, and they have good players throughout the field. Young Carrick Daly as well as another young player who's coming to the fore.
Hat-trick for Ray Barry as well last week. It didn't really run from him the first day out against 4 Mile, but nothing wrong with 3-2, Brian.
Absolutely, and I was trying to remember, I think was it against Kilkenny up in Semple Stadium where he played, I think Michael Ryan was the Waterford manager, and he put in a brilliant performance that evening for Waterford in senior championship. So look, he's a player who's very talented, and every team needs that sort of quality, and particularly when you get to the knockout stages, he's a big player for them. But they have good players all over the field. But it's a big game. I would have spoken of Abbeyside as maybe one of the dark horses in the championship, that if they got a run, that would be a very difficult team to beat. And I suppose Lismore is the team coming into the game on the back of 2 victories. Abbeyside, I suppose it's difficult to judge them on the last day out, being reduced to 14 players so early in the game. Yet they hung into the match, and when you're looking back at it, probably 2 penalties was the difference between the sides, between Abbeyside and Leicester's beaten finalist De La Salle. So they're certainly not without their chance as well. And as I said, it could go either way, to be honest.
And Kieran, Brian mentions the strike rate of that Lismore attack, but will Abbeyside fancy a shootout as well, considering the form of Michael Kiley, Neil Montgomery and Mark Ferncombe as well?
Yeah, very interesting one. And Lawrence Hurley and Briggsy and the backroom team, Gary and Matty and all those involved, obviously we'll be looking closely at that whole area. But as Brian mentioned, there is more free-flowing. When they get free-flowing, can be devastating. And I would say their half-back in last year, Irla and Corrock, didn't have the high standard that they can produce. So they're a very strong duo in the half-back line, and I felt last week wasn't one of their better days. But as regards the taking the key players from an Abbeyside point of view, I assume you'd have the likes of Brian Luby taking up Ray Barry, and I agree totally with Brian. I remember the night Ray Barry that night against Kilkenny, and a lot of the folk in Kilkenny that I'd meet are asking me whatever happened to Ray Barry, and another man people asked me about his Paddy Prendergast. So those 2 boys haven't gone away, but definitely Brendan Landers and Dan have those 2 boys back really firing. And when Ray Barry fires, he's a good forward, is in the game, not alone in Waterford but elsewhere. So he seems to be on a high at the moment, and if he carries it in that form, to be crucial. From an outside point of view, Michael Kiley to me has been a revelation the last 2 years. Consider he was minor 2 years ago. The other night, when things weren't going well for the village, he really stood up and took the game to De La Salle during that difficult period, because losing Morris in the first 5 minutes was a killer blow. And if that happened a couple of years ago, Abbeyside could have really went down badly. But I admired the way they came back, and then there was the 2-goal swing, got a penalty that Abbeyside missed, and then De La Salle got their penalty. So I think there's a lot of positives for the backroom team to work on, but this team has to perform. If they perform to their ability, this will be a very close game. But there's more coming in on a good run, but I feel Abbeyside will test them to the bitter end, and this is one game to be very, very hard to call. And I'm sure the bookies, I think, have Lismore slightly favourites, but I think it is a very much a 50-50 game, but very much there for the taking. And as I mentioned earlier, the fact that Abbeyside are concentrating on the small ball, and I think they got a kick in the backside a bit last weekend, so they have another chance, and they'll be all out to grab it. Likewise, Lismore out to continue. So to answer in a roundabout way, really a 50-50 one. I'd find it hard to call, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Village shocked the Lismore men this Sunday evening.
And Kieran, do you expect that Mark Ferncombe will be on the frees from the start on this occasion? There was a switch of free taker during that De La Salle game.
Yeah. Good question, and really, I must say, it brought Mark Ferncombe really into the game. He had an outstanding second half. Not often plays balls, but it really lifted his we'll say appetite, and he was a different player in the second half, and he was key. I think Michael Kiley is a good free taker, an excellent free taker. Is there too much pressure on a young man who we depended on so much, or Abbeyside depended on so much? Because I thought in general play, he still had a very good second half. So a good question. Again, the management will have to make the big call. Would Kiley prefer to be on, or would he be relieved by taking the pressure off him? Because he's well able for the pressure, so it's a big call. But either men on their day are good free takers. But I felt in the second half, getting Mark Ferncombe involved with the free is definitely up to his general play as well, you know. But Conor Prunty obviously is key at centre back. Neil Montgomery in the half forward line. Now, who'll partner out in the middle of the field will be the big question, because Morris is going to be a huge loss for Abbeyside. Conor Whelan Barrett came on the last. That's a big question as well, because Morris will be a big loss. But I'm really looking forward to that game Sunday evening. As I say, we're doing it live with Fergal, and indeed it's a game that I think everyone is eagerly looking forward to, and thankfully it's live on WLR and also being streamed by the County Board.
Absolutely. So that's Lismore versus Abbeyside, Sunday 6:15 in Fairfield, and it will be live here on WLR. I'm here with Kieran O'Connor and Brian Flannery ahead of the quarter-finals of the County Senior Hurling Championship, and we'll get their thoughts on the two All-Eastern quarter-finals next.
Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomás McCarthy on WLR.
So I'm looking forward to the County Senior Hurling Championship quarter-finals in the company of Kieran O'Connor and Brian Flannery here on Lorna Porca. And Brian, let's look at the two All-Eastern clashes now, starting on Saturday in Welsh Park, 2:30. Rowanmore versus Passage. We could call this one the Peter Queally derby, if you like. Will it be Peter's current team or Peter's former team that'll come out on top come Saturday, Brian?
Yeah, or maybe the Queally Bowl, I suppose, if you were in American sports. Yeah, look, again, I suppose it's always probably better to be going into a knockout championship game like this on the back of victory. And, Rowanmore have 2 wins from 2. They carry all the momentum going into this game. They dispatched, I suppose, both Clonea and Mount Sion with relative ease. Shooting, put 4 goals past Clonea, 221 the last day. They are, I suppose, the form team going into this, and they're rightly favourites. I mean, Passage, they did what they had to do. They won the game that they really had to win. And going in last week against Ballygunner, it was probably a game that they probably felt was always maybe a little bit beyond their reach. So, they were quite conservative in their setup in that game. It'll probably be something pretty similar this Saturday, because Rowanmore tend to play with an extra defender as well. So maybe it's good preparation for Passage. And look, they've been a very consistent team over the last 6-7 years. They've been getting to the knockout stages year in, year out, and of course they have that famous victory from 2013. But I think all the momentum is with Rowanmore, and I think this year the addition of young Sean Burke, Rory Furlong, to add to, I suppose, other young players, the likes of, Conor Ryan, Keane Wadding, and look, I suppose Billy Nolan's only a young fella, but he's probably a veteran at senior as well at this stage. I think they just have that momentum, and it would be a surprise, if Rowanmore don't win this game. Yeah,
Kieran, would Rowanmore be your pick as well in this game?
Yeah, I'd agree with Brian as regards momentum, and I've been very impressed with Rowanmore, and I think the Peter Queally factor, I always feel that new managers coming in, I think the first year of the year you can have biggest impact. If any man can have an impact, it would be Peter Queally. But while on Rowanmore, I think our sympathies go, of course, to the Wadding family. Unfortunately, Mrs. Wadding has passed away, and the Wadding family have been part and parcel of Rowanmore over the years. And of course, Ger Wadding Mrs. Wadding's daughter is married to Mick Briggs up on Abbeyside, so the Briggs connection and the Abbeyside connection there with the Wadding family. But to all the Wadding family, particularly Mick, of course, we all well know from the county board as a county board official, and also, of course, inter-county referee and a great stalwart of the game. So to the family, I think it's only important that we pass on our condolences on this difficult time for them. But I think Mrs. Wadding will be smiling up on high on Sunday evening because Rowan Moore are on the run now. Passage, one thing about Passage, you rule them off at their peril. And Michael Walsh is a shrewd operator, and Brian mentioned the young kids coming through, the young kids on the block. They're so important for them. And while they won it back in 2013, which seems an age ago, I think Rory Furlong and these young lads coming through have no fear going into it, and with the likes of Noel and the Connorses and the Fitzgeralds there over the years, and a good keeper as well, they'll definitely stand firm. But I would have to go with Rowan Moore. I think they're on a good run, and with Quealy at the helm, I think the Nolans and these will definitely turn on the heat on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, very well said, Kieran, and we certainly extend our sympathies to the Wadding family on the passing of Maura Wadding this week. As you mentioned, mother of well-known referee in the county, Michael Wadding. Brian, turning to Sunday afternoon, another all-Eastern clash, De La Salle versus Mount Sion, 2 o'clock Welsh Park. There's nowhere else to start really. The big talking point of the week, Austin Gleeson's red card early on, second minute against Rowan Moore. You were pretty adamant at the time that it wasn't a red card. Are you sticking to your guns on this one?
Yeah, look, I mean, watching, I suppose, the game live in Welsh Park and looking at the incident in real time, you know, it certainly didn't seem to be a red card offence to me. Like, you know, you have somebody like Austin Gleeson, he's, 6'2", 6'3", you know, very fit, conditioned inter-county player, you know, colliding with, you know, a smaller club player, and you know that happens in hurling sometimes. But a red card, certainly not for me. Okay, I know some people, you know, they're looking at slow motions and everything else, but look, hurling isn't played in slow motion, and for me, I think it was an error. I know there's appeal gone in. I'm not sure the result on that, and I suppose look, that'll have pretty much a major part to play in the game this weekend, because of all, I suppose, players and clubs, I suppose no single player means as much to Mount Sion as Austin Gleeson. So it's you know, it is a big issue really, I suppose. Yeah,
like you look at last year's semi-final, Brian, when they met. Austin Gleeson was firing on all cylinders and they came up 4 points short. Now they're without him come Sunday afternoon. You know, how will they fare if they are to field without Austin Gleeson?
Well, look, obviously it would be a huge blow. I mean, even that game 12 months ago where there wasn't a huge amount in it, Austin picked up an injury near the end of the game, and I think he ended up full forward for the last quarter, having been outstanding at centre field. So, look, there's no way of dressing it up. Austin Gleeson is a huge influence on how Mount Sion play, and I suppose how to prepare the team and positioning and everything else. So, you know, if he's not to line out this Sunday, he would be a huge loss, and it would be a major dent, I suppose, in Mount Sion's chances.
Certainly would. Kieran, you've seen De La Salle in both of their games so far against Ballysaggart and Abbeyside. Are they still the number 2 team in the county in your book?
Well, I definitely felt the first night I was impressed with them with the balance within the team and the work ethic, and definitely Brian Phelan has done a great job. That look, there's a huge determination. They're disappointed being beaten in the last few 2 or 3 or 2 county final appearances and by Ballygunner, but as I said the other night, they have to get there first. The other night, I must say, I thought they'd have pulled away better, but was it a better sign of Abbeyside the way they didn't put Abbeyside away as well as we thought? Now 2 goals in the end. When you look at the score, I think the score probably flattered De La Salle a bit in the end, the 3-15 to 1-15. But I have been impressed, Tomas, in particular, of the balance within the team. You know, from Tom, obviously a very good goalie. I think Sean O'Brien's been outstanding. Tom Moran there in the full back line, good half back line. Jack up in the forwards. Kevin Moran playing some great stuff. McNulty there in the half line. So they really are a very, very, very balanced team now. But Mount Sion, Austin is a huge loss to any team, to any county team, not mind the club team. He's huge, and I concur a bit with Brian. I felt if a yellow card was given that time, I think it was a bit of the Richie Hogan in the All-Ireland, a little bit of that, you know what I mean, and the way the player turned, and when you played it back in real time, I didn't think it was bad. Then when I looked at it, as Brian, when you slow it down, you could kind of question the scenario. But look, I think it was very harsh, and hopefully, as Brian mentioned, I think there's an appeal in, but it to imbalance the whole game then as well. But look, they're more than a one-man team as well. I think on Whelan will probably be back. I'm not sure. And Brian right now, PJ Fanning, is he available? And then you've Mikey Dakin, Stephen Roach, the two Martin O'Neill, Gaffney. You know what I mean? They're a balanced enough team. But overall, as we stand at the moment here, looking ahead to the weekend, one would have to fancy De La Salle. But Mount Sinai and the Waterford Championship game are a different team, and I know John Meany will lift no stone unturned, but the Austin Gleeser factor is going to be huge. If Austin plays, you'd really give Mount Sinai a good shout. Without Austin, he's going to be a huge loss, and on that basis, I'd be going for De La Salle.
Brian, before we leave you go, who will be the final four qualifying for next weekend?
Look, I mean, we're talking about De La Salle there. Look, if Ballygunner are the favourites, De La Salle are certainly the best of the rest. So, Ballygunner, De La Salle, you'd have to, I suppose, Roanmore are certainly strong favourites to win their game. The real flip of a coin game is Lismore and Abbeyside. And I suppose, look, given the form going into it and the fact that they have 2 wins from 2, you'd give the nod to Lismore on that one as well. So, it could very well be, Ballygunner, De La Salle, Lismore, Roanmore. That could be very well your last 4. And I suppose, look, the great thing is, there's 8 teams still standing. You have the best teams in the county taking each other on, knockout hurling, I suppose. And that when it as I said earlier, it steps up a notch now. You're not, there's no tomorrow for all the teams, so the intensity will be that little bit higher. Nobody will be holding anything back, and whether you can get to the games, if you're lucky enough to be in the 200, brilliant. If you're not, as I said, you have WLR here and it's been streamed as well, so look, it's good games to look forward to. Yeah,
we might see more people standing on top of vans in outside Farrer Field and Welsh Park here this weekend. Who are your 4 picks for the weekend, Kieran?
Yeah, I concur with Brian. Brian got 7 of the 8 right which was a massive achievement to who qualified for the quarter.
Thanks, Kieran.
But I'd go 3 of the 4 here. I'd go De La Salle, Roanmore, Ballygunner, and I just feel that Abbeyside, I think there's a big game in this side. We haven't seen the best of them yet, and I think if they produce their best Sunday night, I think Lawrence Hurnley's men could make it through to a semi.
Well, stay tuned over the weekend to WLR for the Skoda big match. Tune in for Ballygunner versus 4 Mile Water Saturday evening at 6:20 and Lismore versus Abbeyside Sunday evening from 6:05. So our very own Kieran O'Connor and Brian Flannery, thanks very much for your time
no
today.
Problem, Tomas.
Cheers.
Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomas McCarthy on WLR.